Welcome to the Peak Potential Success Show. My name is Fong, and today we have another very fascinating guest. He comes highly recommended by a lot of people from all over the world who he has been able to help become more happy, more wealthy, and also more and more successful. He has over 30 plus years of experience of doing so. He has been able to generate $3.2 billion worth of client revenue, some of which are Hollywood celebrities as well. He's been appearing in over 2,000 plus media appearances. So he is an absolute stud when it comes to really sharing his expertise. He is an expert when it comes to bridging the gap between humans and AI, which is something that's very important right now, especially helping those who are challenged with the resistance to change, the anxiety of automation, and of course, that self-doubt of personal relevance. He's been able to show leaders how to maximize the performances, helping Fortune 500 teams release their invisible break. He is known as the zero friction doctor, the father of affirmations. So please welcome neural performance architect, 27 times best-selling author, TEDx speaker, Dr. Noah St. John.
Woo, boy, that's exciting. I can't wait to meet this guy.
Look in the mirror. I think you're very close to
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
well, thank you very much for being here.
My
It
pleasure.
is absolutely amazing speaking with somebody like yourself who's been out there in the world helping so many people become successful. And
hmm
the stuff that you talk about is so important. Some people think,
hmm
oh, it's just in the mind, or you just think about something and you can do it. Well, it's easier said than done. And you're the one that's been able to unlock that gap and
Yes.
bridge that gap for people. So
Mhm.
before we get into the tips and tricks and all that kind of stuff, share with us, how did you become this doctor of zero friction and father of affirmations?
Well, Fong, thank you for asking that. It really started very organically and almost by accident, really, because I grew up poor in a rich neighborhood. Now, I know that's a total cliche, but it's really true. I grew up in this little town called Kennebunkport, Maine, which is one of the wealthiest communities in New England, in fact, in the entire country. But my family was dirt poor. And I mean that literally because we lived at the bottom of a dirt road in a drafty, unfinished house that my parents ended up losing to foreclosure when I was just 15 years old. Now, let me get a drink here because I'm getting all choked up.
The nostalgia is really beating you up.
My God. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. My God, I get all choked up here getting talking about this. But anyway, so I'm sure everybody listening to this program has heard motivational speakers. They'll get on stage and they'll say something like, well, we were poor, but we were happy. We didn't know we were poor. Well, I'll tell you what, in my family, we freaking knew we were poor because my mother, bless her heart, reminded us every day that we were poor and miserable. So no, it wasn't happy, it sucked. And so from a very young age, I was painfully aware of the gap, the chasm between the haves and the have-nots. Now, the haves was everyone else in the community. The have-nots was my family. And so I hated that life of poverty. I hated being poor because I saw that right down the street, there's great wealth and abundance. So from the time I was very young, I said, how the heck do I get from here to there? Now, of course, there was no one to help me back then. There was no internet or any of the things we have today. So I did the only thing that I could think of, which is I went to the library and I read every book in the self-help section. I just immersed myself in the traditional success literature of our time, all the classics, Stephen Covey, Dale Carnegie, Napoleon Hill, all the classics. And so I read literally over 200 books in self-help, and they all basically said the same thing, set your goals, think positive, use affirmations and all the rest. So we've all heard that a million times. So I read every book and I really worked hard and I tried to apply it. But I'll tell you what, as hard as I worked, as hard as I tried, I just couldn't get it to work. And so at the age of 25, I was at a very low point in my life. I mean, I just lost my job. I had no money. I couldn't pay the rent. My girlfriend had just left me. It was like a country song, it was like that. But it was really happening to me. So I decided to take my own life. I decided that I didn't want to be here anymore. Now, at the very last moment, after, I was going to do that, my life was spared at the last moment, but I didn't know why. And I said, I've got to find out the answer to life's most important questions, which are, why am I here? What am I doing here on earth? What is my purpose? And what am I going to do with the rest of my life? These questions that humans have been asking for centuries, right? So I said, I don't know how to answer any of these questions. So I said, you know what? I got to go back to the library. And this time I went back to the library and I read every book in the spiritual section, to try to find what is my purpose here on the earth. And so, fast forward 5 years later, in 1997, I had these epiphanies. And after reading literally over 300 books in all of these different areas, I realized what was missing in all of those books that I'd spent all those years reading, and no one was talking about it. And so I said, aha, this is my purpose. This is my mission. And so I decided to write my first book, which was called Permission to Succeed, because I realized that we actually, for most people, and most people listening to this program, most people don't actually need more how to's of success. What we actually need is to give ourselves permission to succeed. And so that's where the title came from, Permission to Succeed. And I actually trademarked that phrase. I actually own that phrase, Permission to Succeed. But my point is, I wrote my book. It was self-published at the time, and then it was published by the Chicken Soup for the Soul publisher. And then subsequently, all these years later, I actually became, as you mentioned, I've now written 27 books, and I became the only author in history to have works published by Hay House, HarperCollins, Simon & Schuster, Mind Valley, Nightingale Conant, and the Chicken Soup for the Soul publisher. No one else in history has ever done that. Not Tony Robbins, not Wayne Dyer, just little old me. So anyway, the point is, to answer your question, how did this all get started? It started very organically, growing up poor in a rich neighborhood, going through all those experiences. And now, as you mentioned, yes, I've helped my clients add over $3 billion, meaning helping people add six, seven, and eight, and even nine figures to their business. But I think even more importantly, helping them win their lives back, literally winning back what they may have lost in terms of their time, their fulfillment, their peace of mind, their relationships. So that's really who I am, and that's what I do.
That is absolutely incredible. I can't fathom how you were feeling at that moment where you go, you know what, I've tried everything, and for some reason nothing's happening, and then you go, oh great, now I have another question as to why am I here, kind of thing, right? So
Right.
let me ask you, because you said the permission to succeed is something that a lot of people is lacking. Now, when you say that, people go, what do you mean? I'm giving myself permission to succeed. Why wouldn't I, kind of thing, right? So, what is that aha moment? Why are people actually not permitting themselves to succeed?
Well, this is funny you asked that because I was actually, when I had this epiphany, I was sitting at a seminar on eating disorders. Now, I didn't have an eating disorder, but I actually have a background as a professional ballet dancer. That's one of the things that I did during my long journey of doing lots of things. So, as a professional ballet dancer, of course, many of that people in that profession are suffering from eating disorders, anorexia and bulimia, and which of course is very sad and very unfortunate. Now, I never had that problem, but I know many people who did. So I literally went to this seminar to learn more about it. And as the speaker at this seminar was talking about eating disorders, I realized that I was relating to everything she said. And she was saying that people who develop eating disorders have low self-esteem and they, are trying to not be here and they, are people pleasers and they're overachievers and all of that. And I'm like, oh my God, I check every box. And so I'd ask the next logical question, which is, well, then why didn't I develop an eating disorder if I check every box of someone who develops an eating disorder? And then that's when the light bulb went on in my brain. And I mean, it was like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I said, now, wait a minute. And it's kind of a long explanation, but if you hold with me, I promise it'll be worth it. It's kind of a long walk, but I promise it'll be worth it at the end.
I'm with you for the journey.
I appreciate it. So if you think about who develops eating disorders, well, it's typically women, right? It's typically women. Now, where have women been taught their worth comes from for centuries? Well, women have been taught for centuries their worth comes from their physical bodies, right? Now, notice what I said. It's not where a woman's worth comes from, it's where they're taught. It's where they've been told it comes from for centuries, millennia, right? Again, it's totally wrong, but it's where they're taught. And remember, it's still taught today. I mean, just look at the media, look at magazines and all this stuff. That's what women have been taught for centuries. So if a person who develops very low self-esteem wants to punish herself, it's very smart to punish her physical body. Okay, so that's what actually is anorexia. I just explained anorexia in 30 seconds. Now, I'm not a woman, I'm a man. So where have men been taught their worth comes from for centuries? Their status, right? Success, money, wealth, their personal holdings, anything you want to call it. I just call it success, right? That's where we men have been taught for centuries our worth comes from. You're not worth anything if you're not successful. That's what we men are taught. It's not true, but it's what we're taught. Just like with women, it's not true, but it's what they're taught. So I said, well, wait a second. So if a human being who's been taught that his worth comes from not his physical body, but his, as I call it, his material body, then wouldn't it make sense that he would starve himself not of food, but he would starve himself of success? And that's when my head exploded and I said, oh my gosh, I've just figured out everything. This explains my entire life. And I realized at that moment that I had just become the person who discovered and named this condition that I subsequently named success anorexia. Now, I told you it was a long walk, but here we are. Success anorexia. Okay, so that's when I realized, wait a minute, I've been studying all these how to succeed books, right? This is how my story ties together, right? So, how to succeed. So, they start on page one. Think about this. For everyone listening to this program, if you're still with me, I hope you are. Think about every single book you've ever read in self-help. What does it say on page one? Here's how to succeed. Well, of course, duh. That's what we all want. We all want to know how. Why am I reading this book? To succeed. Of course, dummy. But what did they forget? They left out the whole point. On page one, they said how to succeed, but they made an assumption that proved to be false, that I proved to be false 30 years ago, which is that every person reading that book had already given themselves permission to succeed in the first place. So they started on page one with an assumption. You know how to succeed, or you give yourself permission to succeed. You're allowed to succeed. You're not starving yourself of success. Those everything I just said was not even in the library. Never been talked about before. So that's where all of those years and years of study came in because I'd read every book and I knew that. And I went, wait a minute. Every single one of those guys made a huge assumption, which was false, which is we all have permission to succeed. And I'll tell you what, when I share this at my keynote speeches, Fong, when I say these things, I mean, I literally have grown men in tears because they're realizing, oh my gosh, I have spent thousands and thousands, sometimes tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, literally, on all these how to succeed programs. But no one ever showed me how to give myself permission to succeed. Let me give you a quick example, if I may, a quick example.
Yep.
And this is very telling. So I was speaking at a seminar in Los Angeles for 1,000 entrepreneurs, business owners. Now, these are 7, 8, and 9-figure earners, very, top peak achievers, right? So I spoke for about 30 minutes. I was walking off the stage, and a man came up to me out of the audience, and he practically grabbed me by the lapels. And he said, Noah, you are the coach I've been looking for. I want to hire you as my coach. Now, I didn't know this man from Adam. Ironically, his name was Adam. True story. You can watch his video and many others on my website. If you go to noahstjohn.com, you can watch his video and many others. But anyway, so his name was Adam. I said, okay, well, what's going on? He said, Noah, I own this company. And it's a software as a service, a SaaS company. And he said, we have grown really fast, or at the beginning, we grew really fast. We've been at 4 million in revenues, but we've been stuck at the same level for the past 4 years. He said, 4 years, we've been flatlined. And he said, I have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to get through that ceiling. I call it the revenue ceiling, right? We just keep hitting our heads on that ceiling. And so he said, I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. I paid all these marketing guys, all these big gurus. He's named a bunch of names. And he said, but we can't break through that ceiling. He said, as soon as I heard you speak about success anorexia and head trash and foot on the brake and everything you just said, he said, something inside me said, this is the coach for you. So he said, I want to hire you as my coach. Now, that's why I love working with high achievers, right? Because they make decisions quickly and friendly. They don't dilly-dally. They don't mess around. Oh, I got to think about it. I got to talk to my wife. No, they just do it. So he hired me on the spot. Now I coached him and his leadership team for 18 months. Now, in that 18 months, do you know that we were able to get his company that had been flatlined for the previous 4 years with no growth to over 20 million
Ooh.
in 18 months? That is a 600% increase in less than 18 months. Now, just to put this in perspective, for most business owners, CEOs, entrepreneurs, founders, they would be thrilled. They'd be over the moon at 10% growth. 15% growth, they're popping the champagne. We got them 600% in 18 months without spending more on ads, without spending any more on marketing. Why? Just by me showing him how to give himself permission to succeed. So for those of you thinking, this probably doesn't apply to me, well, maybe it doesn't, but for some of you, it really does.
Well, I'm going to ask the next question that goes right with that, and that is, okay, you talked about the importance of being given that permission. What exactly does that look like? So for you, what did you do to give yourself permission?
Well, so just so you know, that teaching that I initially called Permission to Succeed has subsequently become what I call now the Power Habits System.
Mm.
So if you see behind me that book called Power Habits, that's one of my 27 books. And you can, again, go to my website and learn more about my books. But we call it now the Power Habits System. And the full name of it, and this is a mouthful, but it's called the Power Habits of Unconsciously Successful People. Now, it sounds really complicated, but it's actually very simple. So if you think about the highly successful people that you know, right? We all know highly successful people in whatever industry, whether it's real estate or investing or, anything, the guru space, any industry, there's the successful people and then there's everybody else. Okay, well, what I realized over 30 years of coaching people and helping people add billions of dollars, make literally billions, I realized that highly successful people, the top 1%, are doing things unconsciously that they don't even know they're doing, number one. And therefore, number two, they can never tell you. So think about traditional books like, The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People or Think and Grow Rich. These are the classics, right, in self-help. And rightly so, right? These are classics. But what do they do? If you really look at what they do, they say, well, so for example, Think and Grow Rich. Let's take that. Again, a classic seminal work in self-help. So what did he do? So Napoleon Hill, he interviewed all these successful people and say, so how'd you become successful? Well, I did blah, 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 blah. And so he goes, okay, do blah, 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 and you'll be successful. Okay, well, how come 30 million people have read that book and not everybody's successful? Right? It's because of what I'm saying right now. So for those of you listening, think about the iceberg principle of human behavior. All right, so human behavior and human thought is really like an iceberg, right? There's only about 5% that's above the surface. That's the conscious mind or conscious habits, right? That's the 5% you can see that's above the surface, right? We call that the conscious level. Well, the vast 95% is below the surface. It's hidden. You can't see it. That's the unconscious. Okay, so there's 5% visible, 95% invisible. And by the way, this isn't woo-woo. This is science. This has all been proven scientifically. This isn't woo-woo stuff. This is very scientific. So everybody out there is talking about the habits, the conscious habits. Okay, if you want to be successful, do this, da, 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 da. Great. So you're looking at the 5%, but you've completely ignored the 95%. So this is how I always say it in my keynote speeches when I'm speaking to, teams, organizations around the world. Imagine you're going into battle and you have 5 guys fighting 95 guys. Who do you think's going to win?
95.
The 95, but only every time. Only every time. So if you're okay with staying where you are, then keep doing what you're doing. Right? So going back to like Adam, that, my client I was talking about, we've got him from 4 million to 20 million without spending any more money on ads or marketing. How did I do it? I did it by doing what I'm saying right now. So he had been, of course, doing the conscious habits, right? And, hey, 4 million, that's nothing to sneeze at. That's really impressive. But he knew that he could do more. So for everyone listening, where are you at right now? Maybe you're at 6 figures. Maybe you're at 7. Maybe you're at 8. but you know you're capable of more. That's why you're listening to this program right now, right? That's why you're smart. You're listening to Fong because he gives great content. He brings on amazing guests and he gives you great content because you know you can do better. But have you ever stopped to think that maybe you are driving down the road of life with one foot on the brake? See, this is another way that I like to teach this about these power habits I was just telling you about. Okay. So remember, this all is involved with giving yourself permission to succeed. This is all the same thing. It's all part of this teaching. Okay. So I want everyone listening to this program to think about your goals. Think about your goals right now. Now, everybody has goals, right? We humans, and we've heard a million times you got to set goals, right? We've heard that a million billion times from every motivational speaker who's ever, you know, spoken, right? You got to set your goals and think positive. I've heard it a million times. Okay, and the irony is that's actually right. It's true. We humans are goal-oriented organisms. We're always thinking about what do we want, whether it's to make more money, to grow our business, to start our business, to exit our business, to write a book, to lose weight, to find love, to have a happier marriage, or have a ham sandwich for lunch. We're always thinking about what we want. So that part is correct. But I want you to think about what a goal really is. A goal is a destination. That's what a goal is, right? Because you are here and you want to be there. So it's exactly like driving your car, right? Because what is a car? A car is a vehicle to get you where you want to go, right? So it's exactly like you're saying, well, no, I want to go down the street to the grocery store to pick up some milk and eggs. That's your destination and that's your purpose. Great. So number one, do you know your destination and do you know your purpose? Now, most people don't know the answer to that question right there. So right there is big, okay? But let's just say, for the sake of argument, you do know that. I know my destination and I know my purpose. Great. So you're ahead of 95% of the population. Great. But what if you had developed the unconscious habit of driving down the road of life with one foot on the brake? Because think about your car for a second. And this is a really, really great illustration for everyone listening because your business is a vehicle. That's what your business is. That's what investing is. In fact, they call it investment vehicles. Isn't that interesting? They don't even know they're doing this, but they call it an investment vehicle. Why? Because it's to help you get to your destination, right? Whether that's retirement, whether that's to be wealthy, whatever your destination is. Okay. So it's a vehicle, just like your car. In your car, you have two forces. You have the driving force of your foot on the gas and the restraining force of the foot on the brake. So everybody listening to this program already has their foot on the gas. Hey, I want that goal. Boom. Of course you do. But what if you develop the unconscious habit of driving with one foot on the brake? Like every single client I've ever coached for 30 years, right? Like Adam. Again, I'm using that example because it was a perfect example, right? He wanted that goal and boom, he got to 4 million, he got to seven figures. Hey, but he's like, what the? But I've been here 40 years. I know I can do more. But see, everybody else was saying, well, step on the gas harder, Adam. Step on the gas harder. No, you're driving down the road. If you step on the gas harder when your foot's on the brake, what are you going to do? Just ruin your car faster. So I'm the first and only one that went in and I said, do you ever think about maybe you're holding yourself back from the level of success you're capable of? What do you mean? And of course, that's the coaching. That's the process. That is my power habit system. There are 11 total power habits that I walk people through. I'll give you another perfect example. Another client of mine, his name's Charles. And he had been watching my videos, reading my books, before he ever talked. That's really one thing that's nice about having all these books and all these videos that, are out there that people can study me before they talk to me, which is nice. I love that. And so he called me and he said, Noah, I want you to coach me. I said, great. I love working with high achievers. Let's go. And I asked him one question I ask all my clients. I said, because he had been reading my books, like I said, and watching my videos. And I said, how much do you think it's going to cost you if we don't install these power habits? In other words, if you keep your foot on the brake right now. And without batting an eye, he said $1 million. He said, no, it's easily going to cost me $1 million if I don't install these habits, if I don't get rid of my head trash, if I don't stop stopping myself from success. I said, Charles, it's very common. I talk to people every day who tell me that their head trash is costing them $1 million or more every year. So I said, why don't you give me, I said, I'll tell you what, why don't you just give me 10% of that million? And I'll find you $1 million in the next 12 months. In other words, if you give me $1 and I give you $10 back, is that a good deal? He goes, yeah, that's a good deal. So he goes, let's do it. So he did. So he literally invested 100K, which is 10% of a million, right? To get one-on-one coaching with me for a year. Now I coached him for a year. Now, as it turns out, I didn't find him $1 million in the next 12 months. Instead, I found him 1.8 million in just 10 months.
Well,
So he gave me $1, I gave him $18 back. Is that a good deal? No, that's a great deal. And he even emailed me and he said, hey, Noah, guess where I am? I'm on a 7-week vacation right now with my wife. He said, with all this money that we have now, I just bought a new RV. He said, this is a dream I've had for 25 years. He said, for years, I've been dreaming of, buying a new RV and traveling the country with my wife, but I could never do it. I didn't have the time or the money. He
hmm,
said, but now, thanks to coaching with you, I have more money than ever before, but even better, I have more time. So he said, I took 7 weeks off. We're driving the country. He literally said, thank you, Noah, for changing my life. So do you see, that's how powerful these power habits really can be. And if you're not doing them, if you haven't installed them, really what it's costing you without you even knowing it right now.
exactly. No, you mentioned a few times the head trash, the
Yes.
foot on the brake, and some habits that people are implementing to get rid of that trash in your head. Are you
Yes.
able to share maybe the most common stuff that you see? Because you've been working with people all over the world, right? There
Yes.
must be some very common things that people today can implement right now.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so remember my power habit system, there are 11 total power habits. And again, remember that they are the unconscious habits. They're below the bottom part of the iceberg, right? That they're not the obvious ones. Now, I'm not saying don't do the conscious habits. You need to do those too. Set your goals and think about it. All the million things we've heard a million times. Okay, fine. But these are the unconscious habits that they don't talk about. All right. So the first thing I want you to do for everyone listening, number one is determine your destination and your purpose. Okay. Now, again, maybe you've heard that a million times too, but maybe you haven't done it yet. That's one of the very most common things that I hear. I mean, this is how I start by coaching my clients, whether it's one-on-one or group coaching. Oh, and by the way, I just want to mention before I forget, when you go to noahstjohn.com, my website, there is a free invisible break score. All right. So go to noahstjohn.com and it literally takes you 90 seconds and will give you a score for are you driving down the road of life with one foot on the brake? All
Or
right.
three
And
or four
literally 90
breaks,
seconds, just answer 10 questions. What's that?
or 3 or 4 breaks at the same time.
Right. Well, exactly. A lot of people say, I got the emergency brake on too. Now, I've heard that a lot. So, anyway, don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. Don't beat yourself up. Anyway, noahstjohn.com, get the invisible brake score. And then when you go to noahstjohn.com/consulting, so again, it's noahstjohn.com/consulting, you can actually book an invisible brake audit. And we'll get on a Zoom call. And in 15 minutes, I'll identify number one, your invisible brake, and number two, how much it's costing you. And number three, I'll give you a step-by-step process to get your foot off the brake, to release the invisible brake. And I call it the invisible brake because that's what it's invisible. You don't see it. But believe me, it's costing you right now. This is like, the people I've been telling you about. Okay. So here's one thing you can do right now today after you get the scorecard and book your audit. All right. So do those two things. So first of all, understand where do you want to go? Like really, what is your destination? And don't just say, I want more money. Okay, here's $5. Go away. No, 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 no. We got to get a lot clearer than that, right? So let's say you're just starting out. Maybe you're in a 9 to 5 right now and you want to transition. You want to start your own business. Okay, well, that's your goal. I want to make enough money in my own business so that I can leave my 9 to 5 job. And by the way, I just want to mention this because there's a lot of gurus out there that give terrible advice. I get so mad at them because they say, well, if you're in a 9 to 5 and you want to be an entrepreneur, just quit your job. That is the dumbest advice I've ever heard. Do not do that. Don't listen to those clowns. Are you kidding me? It's easy for them to say they don't have to pay your bills, right? You got to pay your bills. You got responsibilities, you got a family, whatever, right? So, no, but what you do is you make enough money in your entrepreneurship, in your business, that then you can leave that 9 to 5 job. So don't just quit and say, because what do they love to say? Leap and the net will appear. No, leap and hoping the net appears is where you go splat. Don't do that. It's terrible advice. Terrible advice. Ugh, I get so mad at that. Anyway, so what is it you want? And of course, if you're in your own business, for those listening, if you already have your own business, well, then where's the next level you want to get to? So maybe you're at 100K, you want to get to a million. If you're at a million, you want to get to 10 million, 10 million, 15, whatever it is, okay? And maybe you want to exit your business too. Whatever the goal is, whatever the destination. So be very, very clear on that. Very clear. Then number two, I want you to write down how much do you think you're losing right now because of the invisible break? Right? Like the example I just shared with you, Charles. He instantly said $1 million. I know I'm losing out on $1 million. Now, how do you know? Well, I mean, you don't know really. You're just guessing, basically. Like you're looking at where you are and maybe where you've been for the last 3 to 5 years. Most people, if you look at it, most entrepreneurs that I've coached over the years, they're basically within a certain amount. You know what I mean? That it might go up and down a little bit, but like Adam, like Charles, I mean, like, again, go to my website, you'll see 200, oh, well over 200 case studies. But they're all pretty much the same until we install my Power Habits framework. And then, whoop, then we get the hockey stick, that's like going along here. And then you get a hockey stick. Whoop. It's beautiful, especially in Canada. They love that hockey stick growth. Okay, so that's number one, number two. And then really, I would recommend that, again, after you get the scorecard at noahstjohn.com, book your invisible break audit. But even before we get on a call before you and I get on a call, watch my videos. Go to YouTube because I've done tons and tons of free training on this. It's watchnoahtv.com. It's easy to remember. Watchnoahtv.com. What else could be better? Okay, so just go to my YouTube channel, subscribe to that. Oh, and by the way, I just did a TEDx talk on this, by the way. So you can just Google, Noah St. John TEDx, done with head trash. It's literally 13 minutes, and you can watch. I gave a really, really nice overview of, this whole concept and what you can do. And it was really nice because I do a lot of virtual trainings, kind of like this is. But it was nice to be in person. I was down there in Boca Raton, Florida, is where this event was. And after I spoke, I had a line of people just, wanting to talk to me, which was really, really sweet, very nice. And I remember one person in particular, a man came up to me and he had tears in his eyes. And, I was like, wow, what's going on here? And he said, no, I just want you to know I'm a father and I just lost my son 3 weeks ago. And he said, he had tears in his eyes. He said, I just want you to know that listening to your talk, it was the first time I've laughed since the funeral. I was like, wow. I mean, that was powerful. So in my talks, I talk about things that are very, well, emotional, really. But I also like to entertain. So I do put a few laughs in there, as you may have noticed. I'm not up there telling jokes and stuff. It's not
Right.
about that. It's about finding, the humor in what we are all going through or what many of us are going through. So really, those are some things that, I mean, anybody and everybody can do right now.
Mm. I would have to say for somebody to maintain your energy, your positivity, and your success, it takes a lot of mind work and a lot of confidence, self-confidence, self-esteem as well. So what is your daily routine kind of thing to maintain that? Because there's a lot of people out there that, oh, one bad thing happens and it all goes downhill. So how do you reduce that amount of time of having something negative bother you and switching that into something either positive or disregarding it completely?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that question. I get that question a lot too, and it's one of my favorite questions. So, first of all, I want people to remember where I came from. Okay. And that's frankly why I shared that story. I mean, I grew up poor in a rich neighborhood. I'm not making that up. I mean, we were freaking poor. I mean, I remember going to my friends' houses. And remember, these are rich people. These are literally rich people, rich people. And I would go to their house. I go, man, they have stuff like food. Where do you get that? I mean, it was amazing, you know, because we
The
had
fridge.
macaroni and cheese. That's all we had, man. We just didn't eat. And, it is what it is. But my point is, the reason I'm sharing that is because it is not natural for me to be happy, to be grateful. I mean, again, that's why I shared that I was going to take my own life at the age of 25. I mean, not exactly a happy guy. You know what I mean? You don't get to that point
Yep.
because you're excited and happy about life. So I want people to know that if they're going through a tough time, I've been there. Believe me, I've been there. And so one of the most important things that I do every day upon awakening, and of course when you go to bed, is is thanking God for the gifts of your life. Okay, so that practice of gratitude, and I say practice because a lot of people say the attitude of gratitude. I hate that. That's stupid. It's a practice. Now, there are, in all fairness, there are some people that are naturally happy. Like my wife is a perfect example. She is like the happiest person I've ever met. That's one of the reasons I married her because I was like, how do you do that? I mean, how are you just happy all the time? I've never seen that before because I'm complaining about this and she's like, la 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 la. I'm like, how do you do that? That's incredible. I want to be like you. So being around happy people is a great thing. So if you don't have to be married to one, make sure you get around somebody like that. Make sure you bring that in somehow because it's very easy to get down and depressed about life and all this stuff that we see going on today. But so another practice, I mean, and this is going to sound silly, but is I don't watch the news. I mean, we get enough bad news anyway. I mean, you go on any social media, believe me, you're going to just get bombarded with yucky stuff. And I'm like, I don't need more of that. I think we got enough already. So I don't watch, the evening news or anything like that. So be very, very mindful of where you put your mind, where you put your attention. Be very mindful of that because let's face it, at the end of the day, that's really kind of all we have is our attention, our time. What do we focus on? And of course, you've all heard the phrase, what you focus on grows. And so if you're focusing on doom and gloom, guess what you get, right? So it's very important that you turn that focus. And I'll reiterate that this is not natural for me. It's natural for me to complain, to be down, to be like, and so being married to somebody who's always happy is like, let's see, who would I rather be? This grouchy complaining guy or, a happy guy, So it's like, it's pretty easy to see when you look at it like that.
Mm. So you constantly make that choice. Like once you catch yourself, hey, wait a minute, I'm about to say something or feel a certain way. You got do a little quick slap on the wrist and go, okay,
Yeah,
take care.
yes, you definitely. I mean, for me, it is. It's a constant reminder, to be grateful for all that I have, and I will say something that it's funny because before I met my wife, I met her in 2007. Now, in 2006, I had just gotten out of a really bad, very toxic relationship, one that I stayed in far too long, and I let her walk all over me, which was, embarrassing and humiliating. So I literally ended up $40,000 in debt, and I had to move back into my parents' house, and I was working out of my parents' basement at the age of 40. Talk about embarrassing. Okay. So I realized, wow, I have done almost everything wrong. And what am I going to do to get out of this situation? And that's when I realized I have got to be grateful for what I have. And then I was thinking, but I don't have anything. I'm $40,000 in debt. I got no money. I got no friends. What am I supposed to do here? And then I realized, well, wait a minute. No, you have all your fingers and toes, and you have eyesight and ears, and everything works. And you have a laptop computer, you have an internet connection. You have a lot of things that a lot of people don't have and would be very grateful to have. So why don't you stop complaining and start focusing on what you can do? Stephen Covey talked about the circle of concern versus the circle of influence versus the circle of control. So there's basically three circles. There's the circle of control, which is right in the center, then the circle of influence, and then the circle of concern. Now, the circle of concern, of course, is basically everything that's out of our control. Circle of influence are things that you can influence, but most importantly is the circle of control. And let's face it, there's only three things we can control: what we think, what we say, and what we do. That's it. Good luck trying to control anything else. If you're trying to control another human being, please let me know how that goes for you. Last time we checked, it doesn't work at all. All right. So, but if you think about what we complain about, it's usually things that are out of our control, isn't it? Oh, why isn't so and so blah 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 blah, and why don't they blah 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 blah, and why doesn't he blah blah blah? That's what we complain about. If you really think about it, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
We're thinking about or complaining about things that are outside of our control. So that one of the things that Covey talked about is the more you focus on what you can control, the larger your circle of influence gets.
Hmm.
The more you focus on what you can't control, the smaller your circle of influence gets. And I have found that to be very true. So I started, again, going back to when I was $40,000 in debt, working out of my parents' basement. I said, I got to focus on what I can control. And then fascinatingly, I actually found a mentor who, coached me and helped me to get out of that really awful situation. And then I moved here to Ohio in 2007. And 3 weeks after I moved here, I met Babette, who became my beautiful wife. So see how all of those things really work together. So what's the moral of the story for everyone listening? What does this mean for you? Focus on what you can control. It's easy, believe me, easy to complain about all those things we can't control, but it doesn't really help you. And as you do, all the times that you do, your circle of influence starts to shrink. So focus on what you can control and watch your circle of influence grow.
That's very, very good advice there, and I totally agree. I mean, so many people complain about stuff. I'm like, what can you do about it? You can't. So stop
Right.
focusing on it.
Right.
Something you mentioned was the more you focus on something, the more it grows. And
Yes.
right now, the hot topic is AI and how it's
Yes.
implemented into businesses and entrepreneurship and all that kind of stuff. You're the one that's helping people bridge that gap. So, what have you been hearing about AI that's going to be the biggest impact? Where do you see that going? What are people afraid of?
Oh boy, I love this topic. This could be a whole nother hour. I'll have to come back on,
Yeah,
Fong. We'll have to
I
talk about
figured I
this,
had to
but
ask this question now before we run out of time. So,
absolutely, absolutely. So, just to give you some context, I started my company, successclinic.com, in 1997 in a 300 square foot basement apartment in Hadley, Massachusetts, with $800 in a book on HTML. So I had nothing. I had no money, no marketing, no sales, no business experience at all. I just had one thing, which I know everyone listening to this program also has, which is a deep burning desire to help people, to make a difference, to make an impact, to, as Steve Jobs put it, put a dent in the universe. Right. So I know everyone listening also has this, but that's all I had. Right. So I was there at the very, very beginning of the internet revolution, the late 90s. Right. So if you think about the internet revolution, that took about 20 years to reach its apex. Well, here we are now in the second revolution, which is the AI revolution. Well, that has taken 20 months.
Mhm.
So it is literally increased in speed by a factor of 10x or more. Instead of 20 years, 20 months. All right. So that's point number one. It's very, very fast. So people's heads are spinning for that reason, because it's so incredibly fast compared to every revolution we've ever been through, including, going back to the Industrial Revolution about 100 and so years ago. So here we are in the midst of this revolution, and nobody knows what's going to happen. But here's what I do know. All right. So there are two main forces at work here when we talk about the AI revolution. And they are forces that have been around for as long as we humans have been around. And that are the twin forces of human greed and human fear. Human greed and human fear. Now, it sounds kind of yucky when I say it like that, but there's no way around that. So, human greed is very simple. It's companies, organizations are saying, gee, let's see, we're paying these annoying thing called humans, and they want time off, they want to eat, they want insurance, they want to, you know, they want to take time off, they want to be with their families. Oh my God, they're so annoying. No kidding, right? And so they go, let's see, we can have robots that don't want any of that, that don't need any of that. That sounds great. You see what I mean? Greed. Okay. And I mean, that's the society we live in. We live in a capitalist society. It's called increased profits. Sorry, that's it. I mean, it's like, there's no way around that. So there's human greed on this side. And then on the other side, you have human fear. And that is all these workers that are saying, oh my gosh, a robot's going to take my job. How am I going to feed my family? How am I going to pay my bills? Fear, right? So these twin forces have always been fighting each other, let's face it. But now, of course, because of the speed of AI, as I just talked about, it's just increasing and magnifying by a factor of 100x. So, what does that mean for you, for everyone listening? So, you need to decide, what are you going to do? Remember, I just talked about control versus, versus fear, right? Well, what are you going to control? What I think, what I say, what I do. Okay, so it's up to you as the individual now. If you're feeling that fear, what are you going to do about it? Well, you've got to arm yourself. And the way that I have heard it said, and I somewhat agree with this, is that you probably won't be replaced by AI, but you will be replaced by someone who has mastered AI. So you've got to do whatever it takes. So that's why with my clients, I mean, I'm really helping them with AI, with learning AI, all the different LLMs. We have a program called Click Pulse, where we're actually helping entrepreneurs get seen, get visible, get cited by the LLMs. ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, Perplexity, and Gemini, right? Those are the five main ones. And so the point is we have ClickPulse AI. This is all on our website. If you go to noahstjohn.com, you can explore and see all of this. We also have something called Reply First AI, which is for entrepreneurs to stop losing money from missed calls, right? Let's say you're a chiropractor. Let's say you're a plumber. Let's say you're a dentist. You have receptionists probably, but last time I checked, that's a human. They can't work 24/7. Sorry, they need to sleep. They need to eat. They want to be with their families. Oh my gosh. So what are you going to do on those off hours? The way it works is someone goes on Google, they find you, they call you. If it goes to voicemail, they go to the next person. You just lost that business and you didn't even know it. You lost that client forever and you'll never know. So if you go to replyfirstai.com, there's a calculator that actually shows you how much money you're losing right now due to lost calls. And we install the AI that just texts them right back in 60 seconds or less. So these are just some examples. Okay, so the point is you've got to master the AI, and believe me, that in itself can be very overwhelming. But that's one of the things we're doing is helping our clients to bridge the human AI gap.
Well, thank you very much for that. I just realized our time went by so fast.
It did,
And
didn't it?
I'm like, yeah, it's gonna be maybe 45 minutes, probably not more. But look at that, it's been 45. Just one last question. You've given a lot of great tips, great golden nuggets. Let's say we put you on the world stage again. What's that one last message you want everybody to remember Dr. Noah for?
Get your foot off the brake. Stop stopping yourself from the success you're capable of. You have so much more power than you think, but you do have to stop stopping yourself from success, get your foot off the brake, and take out the head trash that's holding you back right now. And when you do that, the sky's the limit.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. Before I let you go, I got five quick rapid fire questions. Give me the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay,
All
fire
right.
away.
Give me, you're stranded on the deserted island, one food to eat for the rest of your life, no consequence. You'll still be in top shape. What would that be?
Lobster. I'm from Maine. It's lobster, of
Great
course.
choice. Hollywood calls and goes, hey, Dr. Noah, we love your story. We would love to do a biopic of you. Who would you cast to play you?
I've thought of this a lot. Okay, so I know the answer immediately. It's Chris Pine. I love Chris Pine. He is
Awesome.
like perfect, and he's almost as handsome as me. Oh, very funny.
Well,
Sorry, I had to put that in there. But yeah, Chris
Chris,
Pine, he'd be great.
Chris Pine shows up at your door and goes, hey, buddy, you got a cast to play you.
Let's
Let's hang out. Let's have some fun. Oh, I'm hungry. And you go, no worries, Chris, come on over. I got my perfect special dish prepared for you. What would that be?
lobster again.
I should have guessed. You're on a road
I mean,
trip.
of course, I'm gonna serve lobster again. Come on.
You're on a road trip, and there's only one song that plays on repeat. What would that be?
It's My Life by Bon Jovi.
Great choice again.
Love it.
Number from one to four.
What did you just say?
A number from one to four.
Three.
One, two, three. So the word is Swiss cheese.
Oh,
All right. So if you had to use Swiss cheese as a metaphor for success, how is success like Swiss cheese?
success is like Swiss cheese because a lot of people have a lot of holes in their strategy. All right. So if you want to fill the holes, go to noahstjohn.com. Let's talk and let's fill those holes in your Swiss cheese so you can just take a bite out of success and enjoy it to the full.
Nicely done. So that's how success is like Swiss cheese. Thank you very much once again for everybody out there. I'm sure you can tell that Dr. Noah here is absolutely the doctor of zero friction. He is somebody who's been able to help a lot of people achieve success, getting that head trash out of your way and all that kind of stuff. So make sure you connect with him. Pick one or all of his 27 best-selling books and all his content online. So make sure you check that out. Any final words from you?
No, this has been great, Fong. I hope we can do it again.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Once again, thank you very much. Until next time, he's Dr. Noah. I'm Fong. Today is the Day Talk with Peak Potential. We'll see you later.